She poured concrete over my father's lake while I planned his funeral, but she didn't know I'd find the survey proving it was mine, and the proof she'd been stealing from us for years. Welcome to HOA Tragedies. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. I was washing dishes when I heard the trucks. Big ones, the kind that shake your windows when they roll past. Except they weren't rolling past. They were stopping right behind my house. My hands were still wet when I ran outside. 3 cement trucks sat at the edge of the lake, where Dad taught me to swim, where Mom used to read books on the dock every Sunday, where I'd promised him, right before he died 6 months ago, that I'd take care of this place. A woman in a white suit stood there with a clipboard, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She didn't even look up when I ran toward her. "Stop! What are you doing?" She glanced at me like I was a bug on her windshield. "HOA business. You must be the new owner." "That's my lake. Actually, it's an unmaintained water feature on HOA common property. I'm Karen Westfield, HOA president. We voted to fill it in 3 months ago." She turned back to her clipboard. "Safety hazard." My stomach dropped. 3 months ago, I was sitting in a hospital watching Dad take his last breath. 3 months ago, I was picking out his casket. 3 months ago, I couldn't even think about HOA meetings. I didn't get a notice about any vote. We sent it to the address on file. "Not my problem if you didn't update your information." She waved at the truck driver. "Go ahead." "Wait, please, just wait a second." The first load of wet concrete poured out like gray vomit into the water. The same water where Dad's fishing bobber still floated near the dock. The same water that reflected the sunset Mom painted in the picture hanging in my living room. "Stop it! You can't do this!" Karen finally looked at me. Really looked at me. Her eyes were cold. "It's already done, sweetheart. Should have paid attention to your mail." She walked away before I could say anything else. The trucks kept pouring. I stood there, watching 40 years of memories disappear under concrete. My phone was in my hand, but who was I supposed to call? The police? The mayor? Dad? Dad was gone. I sat on the back porch until dark. The trucks left around 7:00. I could hear my neighbor, Mrs. Chun, calling her kids inside for dinner. Mr. Rodriguez was mowing his lawn 3 houses down. Life just kept going like nothing happened. But everything felt different. Mom came over the next day. She stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the gray mess where the lake used to be. She didn't cry. She just held Dad's old fishing rod that I kept by the door. "He loved that water," she whispered. "I know. He fought the HOA for 20 years. They wanted to build a parking lot here once. He stopped them." She turned to me. "Karen hated him for that." Something in her voice made me look up. "What do you mean?" "Your father knew things about how she ran the HOA. Money things. He was going to report her, but then he got sick." Mom's hands tightened on the fishing rod. 2 weeks after his funeral, she filled in the lake. "That's not a coincidence, honey." I spent the next 3 days barely sleeping. I called lawyers, but they all said the same thing. Fighting an HOA takes money and time. Did I have thousands of dollars for a lawsuit? No. I was a substitute teacher living in my childhood home because rent in the city was too expensive. But I kept thinking about what Mom said. Karen hated Dad. She waited until he died to do this. She knew I was grieving and couldn't fight back. That's when I started looking through Dad's filing cabinet in the garage. He kept everything, every paper, every receipt, every letter. I found HOA meeting notes going back 15 years. Complaints he'd filed about Karen's husband's construction company getting all the HOA contracts. Letters about missing money from the community fund. Then I found the property survey from 1985. I spread it out on the kitchen table, traced the property lines with my finger, read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things wrong. The lake wasn't on HOA property. It never was. The survey showed my property line extended 20 feet past where the HOA claimed their land started. The entire lake sat on my family's private land. It always had. Karen didn't have permission to fill in the lake. She didn't have the right. She just destroyed my property and called it HOA business. I grabbed my phone and took pictures of every page. Then I called the county records office. They confirmed it. The survey was real and registered. The lake was mine. My hands were shaking when I hung up. Not from fear, but from something else. Something that felt like Dad standing right behind me saying, "Now you've got her." I looked out the window at that concrete. At the destruction Karen thought she could get away with because I was young, sad, and alone. She thought I'd just accept it, move on, let her win. She was wrong. I opened my laptop and started typing. Every detail, every date, every lie she told. I found the HOA bylaws online and read them twice, found the part about property disputes, about emergency votes, about required notice periods that she'd completely ignored. Then I found something else, something that made me stop breathing for a second. The HOA had a contract with the city for water service, a big one that covered all 50 houses in our neighborhood. And according to the city website, that contract was up for renewal in exactly 8 weeks. I sat back in my chair and smiled for the first time in 6 months because I'd just realized something Karen didn't know. Yet, something that was going to make her regret ever touching my father's lake. Karen's face turned red when I stood up at the HOA meeting. 40 neighbors sat in folding chairs in the community center, and every single one turned to look at me. "I have the property survey from 1985, I said, holding up the papers. "The lake you filled with concrete isn't HOA property. It's mine. It always has been," someone gasped. Karen didn't move. She just stared at me from the front table with a tiny smile, like I'd told a joke only she understood. "How interesting," she said slowly. "Do you have a lawyer?" "I have the county records." "That's not what I asked." She leaned forward. "Because lawyers cost money, a lot of money, and from what I understand, you're barely making ends meet on a substitute teacher salary." Her smile got bigger. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down, accept that the lake is gone, and stop wasting everyone's time with fairy tales about property lines." My face felt hot. She'd looked into my finances. She knew exactly how much money I didn't have. "The survey is real," I said quietly. "Then sue me," she shrugged. "We'll see you in court in about 3 years when you can finally afford it." Half the room laughed. The other half looked uncomfortable. I sat down because I didn't know what else to do. Karen moved on to talking about new mailbox regulations like nothing happened. But after the meeting, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chun touched my arm in the parking lot. "My son works for the city water department." She glanced around like someone might hear. "Karen's been bragging to everyone about some big contract coming up." "Thought you should know." I drove straight to City Hall the next day. My college roommate, Jessica, worked in the records department, and I hadn't talked to her in almost a year. She hugged me when I walked in, told me how sorry she was about Dad, then asked what I needed. "Everything you have on HOA water contracts." She pulled me into a back office and locked the door. "You're fighting Karen Westfield, aren't you?" "How did you know?" "Because 3 other people have tried in the last 5 years. She destroys them." Jessica sat down at her computer. "But maybe you'll be different." She showed me documents that made my hands shake. Our HOA had an exclusive water service agreement with the city. Every house got water through one contract instead of individual meters. It was supposed to save money, but the contract was expensive, really expensive. "Here's the interesting part," Jessica said. "The contract expires in 53 days. It needs to be renewed, or every house switches to individual meters." "What happens if it doesn't get renewed?" "The city installs separate meters for each house. Actually costs less than the bulk rate, but Karen's been telling everyone it would be more expensive." Jessica pulled up another file. "Want to know why?" She showed me Karen's consulting company, the one that negotiated the water contract for the HOA, the one that got paid 15% of the total contract value every year. Karen had been making almost $12,000 annually just from our water bills. That's not even the best part, Jessica whispered. She opened another folder. Remember that concrete company that filled your lake? Yeah, owned by Karen's brother-in-law. The HOA paid him $89,000 for the job. I called around. That much concrete and labor should cost maybe $20,000 tops. I stared at the numbers on the screen. Karen had stolen from the HOA. She'd paid her family member 4 times what the job was worth using neighborhood money. Can I get copies of this? Jessica looked at me for a long moment. Officially, no. These are confidential records. She slid a thumb drive across the desk. But my computer must have a virus because somehow all these files just got copied to this random USB drive that I found on the floor. I took pictures of everything with my phone. 2, just in case. When I got home, I printed out the most important pages and spread them across my kitchen table. Dad's fishing rod was still leaning against the wall where Mom left it. I felt like he was helping me somehow, showing me what to look for. That night, Karen sent an email to the whole neighborhood. Thanks to my leadership, our property values increased by 12% this quarter. Proud to serve this community. I stared at that email for 10 minutes. Then I hit reply all. Interesting numbers. How much did your brother-in-law make filling in my private lake with HOA funds? $89,000 for a $20,000 job seems like quite the family discount. I attached the documents Jessica gave me, the invoices, the property records, everything. Then I pressed send. My phone started ringing 30 seconds later. I ignored the first 5 calls. They were all neighbors asking questions. Mr. Rodriguez wanted to know if the numbers were real. Bill from the corner house said he'd suspected something fishy for years. Mrs. Chun asked if I needed help. The 6th call was Karen. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, she said, her voice shaking. Not with sadness, but with pure rage. I just told the truth. You have no idea what you've started. I will make your life so miserable, you'll beg to move away. She was almost yelling now. You're going to lose everything. You already took everything when you destroyed my father's lake. Your father was a nosy old man who couldn't mind his own business. I'm glad he's not around to... I hung up. My whole body was trembling. She'd basically admitted she was happy Dad was dead. But I wasn't scared. I was something else. Something colder and more focused than scared. I opened my laptop and found the city water renewal application. There was a section I'd missed before, a tiny paragraph at the bottom that said, all property owners within the HOA boundaries had to approve contract renewals. Not just a vote, actual written approval from every single household, including mine. I downloaded the objection form and filled it out. Scanned Dad's property survey, attached Jessica's documents about the overpriced concrete work, wrote a detailed letter explaining why Karen Westfield should not be allowed to negotiate on behalf of our neighborhood. Then I submitted it to the city water department with 52 days left until the contract expired. Karen's exclusive water deal was about to fall apart, and she had no idea I'd just cut off her money supply. The violation notice appeared on my door at 6 in the morning. My mailbox was too tall, 2.3 inches over regulation height. Fine, $200. I ripped it down and found another one underneath. My grass exceeded the 3-inch maximum by half an inch. Another $200. A third notice was taped to my car. Unauthorized parking in my own driveway because my vehicle extended 4 inches past the designated parking zone. $300. Karen was coming for me. Over the next week, I got 9 more violations. My garden gnome was a non-approved outdoor decoration. My trash cans were visible from the street for 12 minutes past collection time. My porch light was half a shade too bright according to community lighting standards. Each fine was $200 to $300. I'd owe over $3,000 by the end of the month. I called the HOA office and got Karen's assistant, a nervous woman named Brenda. I'm sorry, but all violations have been verified and photographed. You can appeal at the next board meeting. Which is when? 6 weeks from now, right after the water contract deadline. Karen was smart. She was burying me in paperwork and fines while ensuring I couldn't officially fight back until it was too late. But then, something happened I didn't expect. Mr. Rodriguez knocked on my door holding a casserole dish and an envelope. "My wife made you dinner. Also, here." He handed me the envelope. Inside were copies of his own violation notices, 12 of them. "She's been doing this to us for 8 months, ever since I questioned why our HOA fees went up 40% in 1 year. Why didn't you fight it?" He looked tired. "We tried. She threatened to put a lien on our house for unpaid fines. We have 3 kids. We couldn't risk it." Mrs. Chun came by that evening with her whole family. Her teenage son carried a laptop. "Show her," Mrs. Chun said. The son pulled up a spreadsheet. "I'm good with numbers. After your email, I started looking at HOA financial reports from the last 5 years. Karen's been moving money around. She'll charge the HOA for landscaping, but if you look at the dates, the work happened 3 months before the invoice. Or she'll bill for repairs that never got done. How much are we talking about? Maybe $100,000, possibly more." He scrolled through pages of highlighted transactions. "She's been stealing from everyone for years." I felt sick. This was bigger than my lake. Karen had been robbing 50 families while acting like she was doing us a favor. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the people she'd hurt, all the families she'd threatened, all the money she'd taken. Dad had known some of it, but he'd gotten sick before he could prove anything. At 2:00 in the morning, I made a decision. I posted everything on the neighborhood Facebook page. Every document Jessica gave me. Every financial record from Mrs. Chun's son, photos of the property survey showing the lake was mine. A timeline of Karen's brother-in-law getting contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then I wrote, "Karen Westfield has been stealing from this community for over 5 years. She destroyed my family's private property with HOA money to cover her tracks. She's threatening families with children over fake violations. And she's making $12,000 a year from a water contract that costs us more than individual meters would. It's time we all knew the truth." I tagged the local newspaper, the city council members, the state HOA oversight committee, everyone I could think of. Then I posted it and waited. By sunrise, the post had been shared 93 times. The local news station called me at 7 asking for an interview. A reporter from the paper wanted to meet for coffee. 3 different lawyers left messages saying they'd represent me for free because HOA fraud cases set good precedents. But the call that surprised me most came from Brenda, Karen's assistant. "I'm quitting," she said. "I need to give you something. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street in an hour?" She showed up looking scared, handed me a thumb drive and a folder stuffed with papers. "I've worked for Karen for 4 years. I didn't know how bad it was until recently. These are the real financial records, the ones she keeps separate from what she shows the board." I opened the folder. Bank statements, wire transfers, invoices that didn't match the public records. Karen had created an entire second set of books to hide the money she was stealing. "Why are you giving this to me?" Brenda's hands shook around her coffee cup. "Because last month my sister got cancer. She asked the HOA for a payment plan on her fees since she can't work during treatment. Karen denied it, said rules are rules." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Then she got a new car, a Mercedes, paid in cash. I took photos of everything right there in the coffee shop, uploaded them to the cloud, sent copies to Jessica at City Hall and to the lawyer who'd offered to help me. When I got home, there was a crowd on my lawn. Not an angry crowd, a supporting one. 15 neighbors holding signs. Justice for the lake. Fire Karen. Stop HOA corruption. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged me. We're done being scared of her. But Karen wasn't finished yet. That afternoon, she filed an emergency petition with the city. I got the notification on my phone from Jessica. She's trying to fast-track the water contract renewal. claims you're causing a community emergency. She'd found a legal loophole that said if she got written support from 27 households, she could override your objection. 27 was the bare majority. Karen had 53 days to get people to sign her petition. With all the evidence against her, it should have been impossible. Except the next day, I saw her going door to door with her checkbook open. Karen handed Mrs. Patterson a check for $500 right in front of me. I was watering my surviving plants when I saw it happen 3 houses down. "Just sign here saying you support the water contract renewal," Karen said sweetly. "Consider it a rebate on your HOA fees." Mrs. Patterson, who was 78 and lived on Social Security, took the check with shaking hands. She signed the paper. Karen smiled at me across the yards like she'd already won. I called an emergency meeting at my house that night. 22 neighbors showed up. We crowded into my living room with coffee and anger. "She's buying signatures," Mr. Rodriguez said. "She offered me $700 this afternoon." "Did you take it?" someone asked. "Hell no! But not everyone can afford to say no." He looked around the room. "The Pattersons need that money for medicine. The Johnsons just had a baby, and they're drowning in hospital bills. Young couple on Elm Street is about to lose their house." Karen knows exactly who to target. Mrs. Chun's son pulled out his laptop. "I've been tracking her petition. She's got 11 signatures so far. She needs 27. That leaves 16 more people she has to convince." "How much money is she offering?" I asked. "Anywhere from $300 to $1,000 per signature, depends on how desperate she thinks they are." He showed us a map of the neighborhood with colored pins. Red pins for people who'd already signed, yellow for people she was targeting next, green for people who'd refused. There were a lot more yellow pins than green ones. Bill spoke up from the corner. He was the grumpy old man who never talked to anyone. "My grandson asked me yesterday why the fish are gone. He's 7. I had to tell him someone killed them." His voice cracked. "I don't care about water contracts or money. I care about that boy learning that bullies win." Everyone got quiet. Bill never shared personal stuff, never showed emotion. Seeing him hurt made something shift in the room. "Then we fight back," I said. "We show people what individual water meters actually cost. We prove Karen's been lying about the savings." Mrs. Chun's son grinned. "Way ahead of you." He pulled up a presentation on his laptop. "I got numbers from the city. Individual meters would cost each house $43 less per month than Karen's bulk contract. That's over $500 in annual savings per family." "Why would she lie about that?" someone asked. "Because she gets paid 15% of the total contract value. Individual meters mean she gets nothing." He showed us the math. She'd been making $12,000 a year from our water bills while charging us more than we should pay. The room erupted. People were angry, really angry, not just at Karen anymore, but at themselves for not questioning it sooner. We stayed up until midnight, making flyers with the real numbers. Printed 200 copies on my old printer. At 6:00 the next morning, we went door to door as a group, showed everyone the truth about their water bills. By noon, Karen's yellow pins were turning green. People who were considering her offer saw the math and said no. The Johnsons taped our flyer to their front door. The young couple on Elm Street shared it on social media. Then the local news aired their investigation. I watched it on my phone while eating lunch. The reporter stood in front of the concrete-filled lake with my property survey. They interviewed Jessica from City Hall about the contract, showed Karen's Mercedes parked in her driveway while talking about families struggling to pay her inflated fees. But the part that made me drop my sandwich was when they interviewed Brenda, Karen's ex-assistant. She held up bank statements and explained how Karen had stolen over $120,000 from the HOA over 5 years. The camera zoomed in on wire transfers to Karen's personal account disguised as consulting fees. My phone rang immediately. It was Mom, crying. "Your father tried so hard to expose her. He'd be so proud of you." But I didn't feel proud. I felt exhausted. Karen had 15 signatures, according to Mrs. Chun's son. She needed 12 more. The deadline was in 9 days. That's when things got worse. I came home from grocery shopping to find my back window smashed. Glass everywhere. Someone had thrown a rock through it with a note attached. Drop this or lose everything. I called the police. They took a report but said without witnesses or cameras, there wasn't much they could do. The officer looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Karen Westfield's husband plays golf with the police chief. Just be careful. My hands wouldn't stop shaking after they left. I swept up glass for an hour, called a repair company, $700 to replace the window, money I didn't have because of Karen's violation fines. Mr. Rodriguez showed up with boards to cover the window temporarily. She's escalating. We need to be ready for anything. He was right. The next day, 4 more neighbors got violation notices, made up charges about tree branches and paint colors. Karen was expanding her attack to anyone who supported me, but she made a mistake. She went after Mrs. Chun's family. Mrs. Chun found a violation notice for unauthorized cultural decorations because of the paper lanterns her kids made for Chinese New Year. The fine was $800. The notice said if she didn't remove them immediately and pay the fine, the HOA would place a lien on her house. Mrs. Chun's son posted the violation notice online with a caption, HOA President fines Chinese family for celebrating their heritage. It went viral in 6 hours, 20,000 shares. News stations from 3 states called asking for interviews. Karen tried to take it back, said it was a mistake. But the damage was done. People who'd been considering her cash offers saw what she really was: racist, cruel, desperate. Jessica called me that evening. The city council is watching this closely. They're questioning whether Karen should be negotiating any contracts on behalf of your neighborhood. That's good, right? Maybe. But she filed something today. A counter-petition claiming you're not a legitimate property owner because you inherited the house through a will that's still in probate. My stomach dropped. Dad's will was in probate. It would be for another month. Technically, the house wasn't fully mine yet. Can she block me because of that? She's going to try. She's arguing you don't have legal standing to object to the water contract because you're not the official owner of record. Jessica said she'd filed it with an emergency hearing, scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. If the judge agreed with her, your objection would get thrown out, and the water contract would be approved automatically. I had less than 24 hours to prove I had the right to fight for my father's lake. I walked into the courtroom at 9 in the morning, carrying a box that weighed more than my future. Inside were 53 documents that would either save everything or prove Karen was smarter than all of us. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain. Karen sat at the front table with a lawyer in an expensive suit. She looked confident, relaxed, like she'd already won. I sat down alone at the other table. My hands were sweating. I'd never been in a real courtroom before. This is an emergency hearing regarding property rights and contract standing, the judge said. Ms. Westfield, you claim the objector doesn't have legal authority. Explain. Karen's lawyer stood up, smooth as butter. Your Honor, the property in question is still in probate. The objector inherited it through a will that hasn't been finalized. Under state law, she cannot make legal decisions about property she doesn't technically own yet. Therefore, her objection to the water contract is invalid. The judge looked at me. Do you have representation? No, Your Honor, but I have evidence. This isn't about evidence, Karen's lawyer interrupted. This is about legal standing. The law is clear. I opened my box, pulled out the first document. Your Honor, I have the probate court's temporary executor designation. It names me as the legal representative of my father's estate with full authority to make decisions about the property until probate closes. The lawyer's smile faltered, just a little. The judge took the paper, read it. This appears to be in order. The objection stands unless you have something else, Counselor. Karen leaned forward and whispered something urgent to her lawyer. He nodded and stood up again. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that the objector has been harassing our client and spreading false information about HOA finances. That's not relevant to property rights, the judge said. It speaks to her character and motivations. We believe this objection is filed in bad faith as revenge for legitimate HOA enforcement actions. My face got hot. Karen was trying to make me look like the bad guy. I have financial records, I said quietly. Proof that Ms. Westfield embezzled over $100,000 from the HOA. Proof that she paid her brother-in-law $89,000 for a $20,000 job. Proof that she destroyed my private property to hide her theft. The courtroom doors opened. 20 people walked in. Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Chun, and her whole family. Bill with his grandson, Mrs. Rodriguez, even Mrs. Patterson, who'd taken Karen's bribe, came in looking guilty. They filled the benches behind me without saying a word. Karen's face went pale. Her lawyer looked nervous. The judge raised her eyebrows. This is highly unusual. Who are all of you? Mr. Rodriguez stood up. We're her neighbors, Your Honor. We're here to show support and to provide testimony if needed about what Karen Westfield has done to our community. I have signed statements, Mrs. Chun added, holding up a folder. From 38 households documenting financial abuse, intimidation, and fraud by the HOA president. Karen shot to her feet. This is a setup. They're all working together, too. Sit down, Ms. Westfield, the judge said sharply. You'll have your chance to speak. But Karen couldn't stop. She's turned everyone against me. I spent 5 years improving that neighborhood, and this is the thanks I get because I enforced rules that her father broke constantly. My father tried to report your theft, I said, my voice shaking but steady. You waited until he died to fill in the lake because you knew he had evidence against you. You used HOA money to destroy my property and called it a safety improvement. That lake was a breeding ground for mosquitoes. That lake was where my father taught me to swim, where my mother painted, where families from 3 generations made memories. I pulled out photos from my box, handed them to the judge. This is what it looked like before. This is what it looks like now. She didn't fill in a swamp. She poured concrete over 40 years of life because my father knew she was a thief. The judge looked at the photos for a long time. Pictures of Dad and me fishing, Mom's paintings, Bill's grandson holding his first catch, then photos of gray concrete and destruction. Your Honor, Karen's lawyer tried again. The HOA had legitimate reasons. Did the HOA vote on this? The judge interrupted. Silence. Ms. Westfield, did your HOA board vote to fill in this lake? Karen's mouth opened and closed. There was an emergency meeting for safety reasons. Was Ms. Johnson notified of this emergency meeting? More silence. Your Honor, she was in probate notices, the lawyer said weakly. That's not an HOA meeting notice. The judge turned to me. Did you receive any direct communication about a vote to fill the lake? No, Your Honor. I was planning my father's funeral. Mrs. Chun's son stood up without being asked. Your Honor, I have the HOA bylaws. Section 12 requires a 14-day notice for any decision involving property modification over $5,000. The concrete work cost $89,000. There's no record of any notice being sent to anyone. The judge looked at Karen. Ms. Westfield, did you follow your own bylaws? The situation required immediate action. We couldn't wait. That's not what I asked. Karen's face turned red, then purple. That lake was an eyesore and a liability. I had every right, as HOA president, to... You had no right to destroy private property without notice or due process. The judge closed the folder. The objection stands. Ms. Johnson has legal standing as executor of her father's estate. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into the HOA's financial practices and the circumstances surrounding this lake destruction. Karen looked like she'd been slapped. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, probably to keep her from saying something worse. "But, Your Honor," he tried one last time, "the water contract deadline is in 6 days. If it's not renewed, 53 households will lose service. Then I suggest Ms. Westfield start negotiating in good faith with all her neighbors, including Ms. Johnson." The judge stood up. "And if I find out there was any attempt to buy votes or signatures, this case will look very different when it comes back to my courtroom." We walked out into sunshine. 20 people surrounded me on the courthouse steps. Mr. Rodriguez was grinning. Mrs. Chun was crying happy tears. Bill's grandson asked if the fish were coming back, but my phone buzzed before I could answer. A text from Jessica. "Emergency HOA meeting called for tonight. Karen's making her last move. She still has 15 signatures. She needs 12 more, and she's got 6 days to get them." Every seat in the community center was filled when I arrived. People stood along the walls, more gathered outside the windows. This wasn't just our neighborhood anymore. News crews had set up cameras in the back. The state HOA Oversight Committee sent 2 observers in suits. Karen sat at the front table looking smaller than before. Her expensive lawyer was gone, just her and a thick folder of papers. The room fell silent when Mrs. Rodriguez, our interim board president, banged the gavel. "This emergency meeting will discuss the water contract renewal and a vote of no confidence in Karen Westfield as HOA president." Karen stood up fast, her chair scraping loud against the floor. "Before anyone says anything, I have what I need." She held up her folder. 27 signed statements supporting the water contract renewal. That's the majority required by law. The city has to accept it. My heart sank. She'd gotten the signatures. Somehow, she'd found 12 more people desperate enough to take her money. Mr. Rodriguez stood up. "May we see those signatures?" "They're legal and binding." "I don't have to show anyone." "Actually, you do." One of the suit-wearing observers stepped forward. "State law requires all petition signatures for HOA binding decisions to be verified and made available for review. I'm Daniel Martinez from the State Oversight Committee." Karen's face twitched. She handed him the folder like it was burning her hands. He read through it slowly, too slowly. My legs felt shaky. After everything we'd done, after all the evidence, was she really going to win because she'd bought enough signatures? Then Martinez looked up. 3 of these signatures are from people who moved out of the neighborhood 6 months ago. They're no longer property owners here. 5 more are dated before the petition was officially filed, which makes them invalid. And 2 signatures appear to be forged based on county handwriting records from previous HOA documents. The room exploded. People shouting, Karen yelling that it was a mistake. Her face had gone from pale to bright red. "That leaves 17 valid signatures," Martinez continued over the noise. 10 short of what you need." Karen grabbed the folder back, shuffled through papers like she could make more signatures appear. "No, that's not right. I counted them. I have 27. You have 17 legitimate ones. The rest are fraudulent." Martinez pulled out his phone. "I'm recommending immediate removal and a criminal investigation for petition fraud." "You can't do this!" Karen's voice cracked. She looked around the room at all of us. "I've given everything to this community. I've worked for 5 years to make this neighborhood better, and you're all treating me like a criminal over some stupid lake." "You stole from us," Mrs. Chun said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood up, holding her daughter's hand. "You took our money. You threatened our families. You destroyed something beautiful because one man tried to stop you." Her voice got stronger. "That's not leadership. That's theft." Bill stood next. "My grandson cried when the fish died. 7 years old, and he learned that people with power can destroy things just because they feel like it. You taught him that. Then, Mr. Rodriguez, you tripled our fees to pay your family members for fake work." Mrs. Patterson, who'd taken Karen's $500 bribe, stood up shaking. I signed your paper because I needed money for my heart medication. But I can't sleep at night knowing I helped you hurt good people. I want my signature removed. One by one, people stood up, shared their stories. The violations over nothing, the threats, the fear. Even some of Karen's original supporters looked uncomfortable. Karen tried to speak, but nothing came out. She looked at each face and saw what she'd done reflected back at her. No one was on her side. Not one single person. I moved to vote for removal of Karen Westfield as HOA president, Mrs. Rodriguez said. Seconded, 4 people said at once. The vote was 43-2. Only Karen and 1 other person voted to keep her. She didn't even wait for the meeting to end, just grabbed her purse and walked out. No goodbye, no apology, just gone. 3 weeks later, the city approved individual water meters for our neighborhood. $43 less per month for every house, exactly like Mrs. Chun's son calculated. Karen's consulting contract was terminated. Her brother-in-law's company was under investigation, and the state filed charges for embezzlement and fraud. But the part that mattered most happened 6 months after that. I stood in my backyard watching excavators carefully remove chunks of concrete from the lake. The city had forced Karen to pay for the restoration using the money they'd recovered from her accounts. Every penny she'd stolen was going toward fixing what she destroyed. Mom stood next to me holding Dad's fishing rod. She wasn't crying this time, she was smiling. "It won't be the same for a while," I said. The lake looked raw and wounded. Muddy edges, disturbed soil. No fish yet. Nothing's ever the same after it's been hurt. Mom squeezed my hand. But it heals. It grows back different. Maybe stronger. Bill walked over with his grandson. The boy carried a bucket of minnows we'd bought from the bait shop. Ready to start restocking? We released them together. Tiny silver flashes disappearing into brown water. They'd grow, multiply. In a few years, kids would catch fish here again. The Chun family arrived with native plants for the shoreline. Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez built a bench with Dad's name carved into the wood. We placed it where he used to sit every Sunday morning with his coffee, watching the sunrise. As the sun set on that first day of restoration, 30 neighbors gathered around the lake. We released paper lanterns that floated across the water surface, glowing in the dusk. 40 of them. 1 for each year Dad had protected this place. "He'd be proud," Mom whispered. She was right. Not because I'd won, but because I'd learned what he'd been trying to teach me all along. That some things are worth fighting for. That communities survive when people stand together. That bullies only win when good people stay silent. The lake wasn't just water and fish. It was proof that destruction isn't permanent. That what's taken can be reclaimed. That memory and love are stronger than concrete. Bill's grandson caught a minnow in his hands and laughed. The sound carried across the water like music. Dad would have loved that sound. Another day. Another community reclaimed from tyranny. HOA Tragedies brings you the battles and the breakthroughs. Don't forget to like and follow for more stories of standing up to the clipboard tyrants.